veterans start getting out and getting older, them recognizing their relationship to alcohol or drugs or whatever it was that they found in the military and needing some sort of resource. We have a huge veterans community that participates in Phoenix programs. A couple of our volunteers are veterans. Having the Phoenix help us find a sense of community, because we find that with the Army and we find that that camaraderie. And when we come back, we lose it. And so we've been able to help veterans find that camaraderie.
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. We are your hosts, Bryce III, he, him pronouns.
And Liz McKean, she, her pronouns.
And Liz, how's your energy today?
It's good. Did you hear what I did there?
No, I did.
And Liz McKean.
Oh, okay. All right. So you get to do the crazy voice, but I can't.
You could do it too. You just have to deal with me laughing. My energy is just lighthearted, I think. I would call it lighthearted, which is nice. I think you get to a point in the week where it's just like, oh my God, everything's crazy. And then it's just like, you know what, it's going to be what it's going to be. And you just get lighter about it. And that's where I'm at today. How about you?
That was probably same energy, except for instead of the week, it's life. Where it's like you get to the point in life, in the season that you're in, where it's like, look, man, everything is wild and crazy, and that's what it's gonna be. And so we're gonna show up for it, and we're gonna contribute where we can, let go where we can, and enjoy the ride.
Well, that's a good place to be in life. I haven't gotten to the point where it stays more than like an hour, but I'll work on it for like life.
Well, see, that's the difference between you and me, because I am not counting. Man. I'm just going to let it be what it is, however long it decides to be. And then from there, we put our hands up.
I know. Well, I'll tell you a place where you're not all that like go with the flow about things. And that is when we talk about snow. Apparently, that's like
so. Look, okay, so
the least chill version of Bryce comes out.
Chill, the least chill. I see what you did there. It's a spiritual process for me. I was saying this the other day when we was walking out of Meyer, and I'm like, I hate this. Like, I hate everything about this. I don't say hate a lot, and I don't hate it, but I just like it very much.
I get it.
I don't like being cold. I don't like it. And like I've had 34 years in Detroit, Michigan, and why am I still here? I just don't like it. But spiritually, when we're faced with things we don't like, it's like, okay, but what is in here that I need? Like, how can I step into it? How can I show up for what it is, even though it isn't what I desire for it to be? And how can I find opportunity to thrive? So that's my superhuman. And then my human is like, it's cold. I don't want it anymore. Get it out of my face. Don't mention snow to me. If you do, I'm turning the mute button on. But
I've experienced that.
We figure out how to show up for life on life's terms, and that's why I'm here in this moment with this space heater blowing very heavily.
Well, I'm glad you have a space heater. And I'm glad you're not cold right now.
Our guest today has a beanie on, so I'm thinking that she can relate to what it's like to be cold in life. And we're coming up on or Veterans Day just passed. And so we wanted to make sure that this episode was here to speak specifically to the veterans experience. And this person has had an experience that aligns with that conversation. I'm excited to dig into it. Liz, who do we have?
Oh, okay. Well, we have Kelly Miller. I'm going to read all the things about Kelly Miller because we haven't had the opportunity to talk a lot before this conversation. So this was all, new information for me. And I feel like I want to set the stage with the whole thing. So Kelly is a regional manager at the Phoenix. So we know each other through the Phoenix, of course, supporting programs and team members in 6 states across the country, casual. She also has a background in mindfulness and trauma, which she shares through leading yoga at veteran retreats and teaching workshops to service care providers and educators. She's also the founder of the Movement Collaborative, which is a trauma-informed movement space in Livingston, Montana, that's home for support groups and group exercises classes, such as the Phoenix Yoga. I feel like so many of us at the Phoenix do that. We like branch out, like there's this, piece that's the Phoenix, and then there's so much more. And Kelly is a veteran herself, serving 13 years in the Montana Army National Guard, which included a year-long deployment in Iraq, supporting Operation New Dawn. So Kelly, thank you for your service and welcome. And how the heck are you?
Hi. Yeah. What a beautiful intro. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm super excited to just highlight what it is, how veterans navigate the world around substance use and what it means to be in recovery. And I think kind of what leads us a lot to wanting to cope through using substances. So yeah, thanks for having me. I am good, but I am also cold. Livingston, Montana is very cold right now. And yes, I'm wearing a beanie indoors because it's a lot cheaper than firing up my wood fire stove. So wearing a beanie inside is a lot more efficient.
We're all in for cost efficient clothing. I'm telling you that the clothing that helps us to cut down the cost and expenses.
It also looks cool.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. That's a cool beanie. It's the Phoenix beanie. So come on, I'd wear it.
I have one in 3 different colors, and they're so soft. I just love the Phoenix beanies. I don't even know if they're on the shop anymore.
Oh, shoot. I don't know either. If not, here's our plug to get them back on.
Here's our ask.
Because they're cool. Yes. Yeah, holidays are coming. I know we're going to have some cool new merch up there for holidays. So I bet there'll be something. If not that, something similar.
Yeah, I'm definitely jealous. Yeah. I would definitely get one if they put one back on the site because it looks like your head is warmer than my feet is right now because my feet are ice cold. I feel like we should just get into it. What your experience has been. This is one of those instances where like you were excited to come on the pod and you reached out. And so I know you have like specificity around like what you want to share. So I'd like to dig into it. I got a couple of questions for you as well in regards to military, but just in general, like who's Kelly? How are you? Where are you coming from? What do you want to share?
So I wanted to come on this podcast because being a veteran is literally what led me to doing everything that I'm doing in my life right now. And I definitely had to give up. And there was a lot of compromise in the beginning of my military career that was really tough. And I now look back on it as such a huge blessing because I wouldn't be where I am, probably geographically, in my career, anything, because of my choice to join the military. I signed up when I was 17. My mom didn't want me to join. And so in turn, being a 17-year-old, I joined, I signed the paperwork on her birthday, which I know. So we never forgot my enlistment date, and every anniversary, every year it came up. It was in that era that, 9/11 happened when I was in high school. And it was that initial push where they were starting to send everyone over. And my mom was concerned about that. But me being 17, I was just living in the moment, and a recruiter came to my school and I was like, cool, sign me up. Let's go. And that led to going to basic training and going to my job skill training, and then coming back and just right away was able to kind of use with the Montana Army National Guard, just to give you some perspective. It's a little different than like active duty Army. You go to your initial training and then you actually get assigned to a unit within the state that you live in. And so I saw it as an opportunity. I grew up in a house that didn't have a lot, and I knew that there's no way I was going to be able to go to college financially. And here was this opportunity to have college paid for. And so I really went because of that. So I came back and didn't get into college immediately like my plan had was. Spent a couple of years just living life and doing the 1 week in a month thing. And it wasn't until I found out I was pregnant with my first son that we learned that our unit was getting deployed to Iraq. And that was in 2010. I left for Iraq when my son was 6 months old. And at the time, I was just living. I think Bryce had said something about like living. I don't even count the hours. I just go with it. And that's kind of what that first year was just going with it. I had originally signed up to be a petroleum specialist, which is a fancy word for being a gas pumper, even though I really didn't do it for most of my career. When I went to Iraq, they do something called to give you a different MOS, which is like a neutral MOS, which really what gave them the opportunity to mesh different jobs with one common goal, bring in females into all male units. I went back and forth during that year, going from northern to southern Iraq, up and down on convoy missions, either driving the truck or being a gunner. I did get to go home for leave when my son, so I could see his first birthday. And a lot of how he was raised and who he is attributed to my mom, who took such good care of him and helped me with, at the time, what was it? Skype. We got to Skype once in a while. And so I saw his first steps on Skype. I saw a lot of his firsts on Skype while I was overseas doing this convoy security, which was a whole just amazing, beautiful, and awful experience. Getting to serve with a bunch of people that I already had known. That's another benefit of being part of the Montana Army National Guard. You go with a lot of people that you've been training with for years. And I learned a lot about myself. But prior to that, starting at the age of 17, I was drinking, and alcohol was a huge part of my life all the way up until about 2019, honestly. From the time when I got in and I saw everybody going and drinking after training was over for the day, and me feeling super left out because I wasn't even of age. I think that's kind of where that FOMO started. In the military, we drink to celebrate. We drink to grieve. We drink through everything. And that culture got very instilled in me right off the bat, to the point where, drinking was just a huge part of all of that. When I was overseas, our truck got hit by an IED, leading me to having a traumatic brain injury. I had a lower back injury, and I stayed and I finished off. Actually, it was like a month before we left. It was like a couple of days before my birthday that our truck got hit, and I just felt so lucky up until that moment. And so anyway, I finished training, still, doing the Army thing. And I came back thinking I was totally fine. And I was watching so many other people that I had been overseas with struggle with their mental health. And then it was funeral after funeral after funeral, going to say goodbye to these guys who I was overseas with, who just couldn't take it when they came back. There was a lot of there's a lot of trauma that goes into our experience from over there. And it's a huge culture shock when you are doing that for so long. And then you are supposed to come back and just start your normal life again. It's just such an unrealistic expectation. And unfortunately, we had to say goodbye to a lot of people that we served with over there because they didn't get the help that they needed when they needed it. And here I was saying, "Oh, I'm fine. Like, what the heck? Like, I got hit by an IED, and half of you guys didn't even leave the wire. And like, what is your problem? And I'm so much more resilient." And I got into law enforcement, and I was doing really good, and had a job. And then I went into being active duty. I was a recruiter for the Montana Army National Guard, and so I'm just like sitting here thriving, like totally fine. And it wasn't until I started dating a guy that didn't drink that I realized how much I drank. I started dating him, and he's like, "I don't drink. I'm sober. I'm like 5 years sober." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, I guess I just won't either." And so I stopped drinking, and I don't really have, I obviously don't have much of an addictive personality. I smoked for several years and then just stopped. And then I drank for a long time and then just stopped. But then the flashbacks started coming and the nightmares and the night sweats and not being able to sleep. And that's when I realized, oh, wow, I am not okay. Like, I had just been literally numbing myself with alcohol since coming back from Iraq. And looking back at pictures, I can see that I wasn't okay. And my health wasn't okay. But I think the alcohol making me think that I was this superhuman that wasn't affected by trauma at all. And it was just such a normalized thing, alcohol in my family, and then alcohol in this huge, big career of mine, that I didn't think it was going to have such a huge effect as the effect that it had. And so anyway, I realized that I needed help. And so I reached out to the VA for the first time. I had come back from Iraq 8 years after I came back. And I reached out to them. Like, I would drive down the road and I would have no idea why, but I would instantly pop back into my gun truck and just start having crazy flashbacks that were leading to panic attacks on the side of I-90. And it was a big concern when it was started happening and my kids were in the car. And so I reached out to the VA and I was like, I still hadn't matched up that I wasn't drinking with these symptoms that were coming from PTSD. And so they're like, what are you doing? And what are you doing for exercise? And I was exercising and I was doing all these things. And they're like, well, how often do you drink? And I was like, oh, it's casual. A bottle of wine a night. And they're like, that's not casual drinking. That's not normal. And like the VA really had to make me realize that I had a drinking problem. And then I read the book, Quit Like a Woman. And then I dove headfirst into anything I could to make myself feel good about my body and my brain and my mental health. And that's when I found yoga through the Veterans Yoga Project. They actually offer scholarships to veterans and people who are interested in passing along these mindfulness techniques that really help. And so I originally went just for myself because I was like, man, I got to do something to help me sleep. The VA instantly wanted to kind of, not dogging on the VA at all, but they were wanted me to feel better. So here are these prescriptions and here's this medicine that's going to help you feel better. And I am so bad at taking medicine that I was like, I can't do it. And so I found meditation and I found yoga and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can sleep better and I'm able to ground myself and find myself in the present moment. And although didn't cure everything, it definitely made it to where I was able to at least endure it and deal with it. And so I came back and brought some of that stuff back to my own community here in Livingston and started realizing that it didn't matter whether it was a roadside bomb or whether it was child neglect, right? Trauma is trauma. And so I started diving deep into how trauma affects our brains and our bodies. And so that I could really serve my community through my own experience, having that firsthand experience, and then having the experience of being able to actually breathing and stretching and meditation actually helps. And here I am, I'm proof that it helps because I'm still here. And I attribute me still being here to yoga and movement and dance on several occasions after I stopped drinking, that saved my life. I'm absolutely positive that it did. And so I dove into the education of trauma and mindfulness even more, which led me to being able to teach different workshops and be involved in different studies as far as how yoga helps. This will be my third year being part of a study through Montana State University where I get to share my experience and share yoga with high school students to work on being able to prove that having mindfulness in the classroom and the benefits of that. And so this will be my third year getting to do that. And so then I opened the Movement Collaborative because we had 2 gyms here in town that I was teaching group fitness and I was having to tell people that they couldn't come if they couldn't pay and they couldn't come if they couldn't bring their kid. And I hated creating more barriers to what was already a challenge. And so I literally had everything in my bank account to open and put down a deposit on a studio of my own during COVID. And it's a pay what you can. We also have scholarship through a local organization that pays for people who can't pay to come. So I just, out of that, just all of that trauma and heart break and uh, giving up a lot and going through a lot, I was able to create this beautiful space where we have Cancer Alliance support groups. We have Phoenix programs. We offer all sorts of different movement opportunities to people who, whether they can afford it or not, they can come. And it's through that I started different people started reaching out to me about Arthur Blank Foundation, who is a just amazing organization, and he's an amazing person, and he also funds programs in Montana for Phoenix. He has a ranch nearby us, and where several different organizations come to do retreats. And I had a veterans organization reach out, and I get to go lead yoga for these veterans who are there who were literally I was there like 5 years ago. And I actually got to do it this week. This week was a retreat where I go at an ungodly time, like 5 a.m., to go teach yoga to a bunch of veterans. And just being able to be there and recognize the difference and the healing power that it has just been everything. And so even though it led to me being now 80% disabled for tinnitus and my brain injury and PTSD, like I get to do some amazing things through both the Phoenix and just in the veteran community. And they just completely cross over in so many ways, because I think we'll see it more and more now as like people start to, I think, get older, veterans start, getting out and getting older, them recognizing, I think, get older, veterans start, getting out and getting older, them recognizing, their relationship to alcohol or drugs or whatever it was that they found in the military and needing some sort of resource. We have a huge veterans community that participates in Phoenix programs. A couple of our volunteers are veterans. Having the Phoenix help us find a sense of community, because we find that with the Army and we find that, that camaraderie. And when we come back, we lose it. And so we've been able to help veterans find that camaraderie through healthy experiences through the Phoenix. And I wake up pinching myself every day. I'm not even kidding. The fact that I get to do this and that all of this has led to being able to tend to things that are just super instrumental in my life has just been amazing. So that was a lot of rambling. I feel like I was rambling.
That was a beautifully told story. The opposite of rambling. Thank you so much for sharing that. And also, you should be on more podcasts, Kelly, because you really are very, very good at it. But I'll let Bryce chime in because I just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks.
No, I think like the way that you told your story, like there's these moments. There's like the initial experience, and then there is the transition back home, and then there is the revelation that, like maybe this thing I thought wasn't a thing is a thing. Mm-hmm. And then there is the seeking to have understanding for yourself in the midst of that discovery. And then there is the creating spaces for other people to be served and to be helped and to be held due to the fact that you've discovered what it is that you needed to be able to turn things around. And I just love like a complete story like that. I think for
I had goosebumps several times.
For me though,
that's good to know.
Like I'm, whatever you're comfortable talking about in regards to like the specificity of what it is that you experience that maybe would cause someone to self-medicate or to need that. I think I've had a couple of conversations with veterans and people that have been in like fields like that. One specific conversation I had, it was like a paradigm shift for me, was like I'm big on emotions. Like from the very beginning, I've always felt emotions. And the way that I dealt with them to begin with was to like shut them off, because it's like, yo, like this is too much. This is amplified, and I need to turn it down a little bit. So I would seek things outside of myself to put inside of myself. But one thing that really changed my perspective was talking to somebody, and they said, when you're over there, like you're taught to act, then think, then feel. And if you don't, like you might lose your life, or like you're in danger if you don't act first.
Absolutely.
Whereas like when I came back, you know, you all are learning to like think, feel, and then act in that order.
Absolutely.
You know, and talking to him specifically, he was telling me, and you know, I ended up being in like a domestic situation because like I just acted. And like after the fact, like I had to think about how I even got there. Like nobody prepared me for the integration back into society, where it's like you don't act first. And so that really opened my mind to like the specificity around what it is that not only you deal with, but the ways that you're trained to look at the world, because that's what keeps you safe. What are like some specific experiences that you had that you think maybe might contribute to when you all came home, you were going to so many funerals because people couldn't adjust?
Well, a big part of that, and I appreciate you saying that, because I guess I really didn't think about that. Think after, debrief after it happens. For me, my observation and my experience with, why we tend to self-medicate and not reach out for help is we're soldiers, right? And soldiers aren't weak. And any sign of weakness, any sign of vulnerability is attributed to weakness. Crying is not allowed. Emotions are not allowed in the military at all. And, we do get this we get brief training when we come back. It's not well accepted because of the way that it's delivered. The information is delivered. Don't beat your wife and don't hurt your kids, and reach out if you need help. And that was kind of the guidance that we got when we came back. And I met my husband over there. And well, he's now my ex-husband. But our whole relationship was around alcohol. And when you were talking about the act first and think later, that was our entire marriage. Watching it, that was his second deployment. He had went when I had originally joined, and he just came back with such significant trauma, and watching him just not want to reach out for help, and still not wanting to reach out for help because it's a sign of weakness. And I think we feel stronger, and we feel like we're able to take care of it through self-medicating. It's this mask of, if I drink, I'll feel better. And in that moment we do, but then there's a lot of shame behind that, and we don't want to talk about it. I would like to think that a lot of those funerals could have been prevented if they just would have been given permission to ask for help in a way that made it not feel like they were giving up or that they were weak. I think that has a huge culture shift that needs to at least be looked at or considered when we're talking about helping veterans. And it's something that I even told the group today. Today was our last session, and I said, it was all men, and I said, thank you for being here and learning so that you can take it back to the units that you still serve in, or the friends that and share with them that it's okay to feel, and it's okay to sit in those emotions. And when it doesn't feel right, it's okay to reach out for help, because we just don't want to be weak. We don't want to accept that trauma makes us weak. Trauma, they say what's the saying? Like, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I'm not sure who created that, because that is not, in some aspects, I guess it builds resiliency, but
only if you heal first, you can't just be a gaping wound, and be like, look how strong you are with your broken arm. It's like, or, and I also...
You need the cast first.
Yeah, exactly. Get a little support there, then let it heal. Yes. Then maybe, I don't even know, maybe it's stronger, or maybe you just know better than to do the thing that broke your arm. I was just thinking, you're, like you said, like you're a soldier, and that weakness, I just think there's like so many layers to it. The more I think about it, like you are the ones who people go to for help. Like you are the helpers. You are the one, you are literally tasked with protecting the country, like, and everything that everyone believes in. And like, here you go, take care of it. And so I think the fact that it's you and other folks who have had that lived experience, who are not only saying ask for help, but also you can ask me for help. Like, I can't imagine it really resonating and coming from anyone else, like, because if you're a soldier, you're the, like, it's almost like, when you suddenly become an adult and you look around and, you're being trusted with a bunch of children or responsibilities, and you're like, oh my God, am I the grown up? There's no one for me to ask. I feel like that must be how it is when you're a soldier, like in the entire world, like you always are the one, and who are you supposed to ask? You're the one everyone else is. And to know, to have like, that's what you're building, because it's gotta be you. Like it's, yeah. And I don't even know. I'm being about as non-elegant saying that as I possibly could be, but
that's okay. It's not an elegant conversation. Yeah. So yeah, no, absolutely. Like, who put me in charge? Oh, like someone needs to tell someone that's in charge. Oh, you're in charge. Well, who did that? Why? No, I can't be in charge. Yeah. And it's like, I can't be in charge of my own body and my own mental health. And also, like, I think we get over there and we get so used to the adrenaline and operating out of our fight or flight that so many come back just wanting that and craving that, because that's normal. Yeah. And so many of us, I came back and was a 911 dispatcher and a detention officer, thinking I was going to go into being a police officer, just because that was my normal, and that was but I feel like we don't ever get an opportunity to come back to our base level, right? We find that hypervigilance to be our normal, and we're just seeking that through whatever way possible. And the only way to shut that off for me was to drink. Well, it was the only way.
And you started at 17. Off. I mean, you enlisted at 17. Yeah. So it's not like you had years to even establish, like your adult self wasn't even ever established. So the only version of that was what you were taught. And so to come back and be like, go back to, society, it's like, you don't even know what that would look like within yourself. That's, yeah.
Now I'm just like playfully brainstorming out loud. But I wonder if, like, when veterans came home, like if you have to go to this 2-week silent meditation retreat, like what that would do, because I know it's that experience of like, this is just what it is, it can be like a shaking snow globe. And there's certain practices, and Kelly, you share that, mindfulness practice, yoga was some of those practices that allow for you to show up without having to take the medication that is really like embedded within the treatment process of, the veterans assistance programs. I wonder if like there was like, it's required for you to do this thing and stop your snow globe from shaking. Kind of like when you eat sugar and it's like you stop eating sugar for like 2.5 weeks and then you eat a carrot, like, oh shit, this carrot is sweet. Like the same.
Or when you come up from underwater, you have to like go through like a decompression chamber, because otherwise you explode.
Slowly too, because if you do it quick, your brain will explode.
Right.
So
we're really coming up with solutions over here, Kelly.
I love it. Yeah, no, it's true. Like, we have something which it's called Yellow Ribbon, and it's a great program, and it's really meant to help us. But unfortunately, one, it's mandatory, which it should be, I guess. But the way it's presented is in the Army fashion, right? Like, we were all in our uniforms, on a campus in Missoula, watching these PowerPoints when all we wanted to do was get released so that we could go party. And we were given maybe 8 hours worth of PowerPoint information, and then handed just so many brochures and pamphlets and cards that I immediately threw away after going back to my car. And I really believe that if we could get something like that, I mean, maybe not a 2-week silent meditation, but something that's like, this is normal. People do this. People feel, people breathe, and this is okay. And which is interesting because the VA inpatient center, right? If you go for inpatient, like recognized, or you're court ordered to go, there is yoga. There is a gal that leads yoga on Fort Harrison, right? And there's pamphlets for Phoenix yoga at our veterans court and our treatment court. Like, why can't we do that even before we send them over? Like, why can't we incorporate that into like being proactive with it to normalize it instead of being reactive and having a bunch of veterans with their 4th DUI at an inpatient treatment center learning about yoga nidra for the first time in their lives.
For people who are listening, and for me too, selfishly, what exactly is Veterans Court?
It's actually pretty new, which is great. So treatment court, right? You go in for a DUI and they're saying, well, you can either do jail and pay this fine or go through this program.
Like drug court, I think is what I've heard.
Like drug court. Yeah. Thank you. Like drug court. They are now starting to do it around the country a lot more. And we have a couple in Montana that's veterans court, specifically for veterans who receive these charges based off of things that were probably symptoms of their service.
Yeah.
Whether it be domestic violence or DUIs or drug charges or theft charges, or which happens a lot, like assault of a peace officer, because they weren't sure how to interact with that veteran in that moment of crisis. They go before a judge and they get the opportunity to go through veterans court, which gives them the opportunity to heal with other veterans and seek resources with other veterans. And sometimes that also means you're going to go to inpatient, on an Army base and receive care that way. So
like surrounded by folks who have had that shared experience. Yeah, that's really powerful.
Yeah. I had we've got some stuff here where we've showed up for Veterans Court, and I had not idea that that's what it was, but I really wanted you to like magnify that, because like there goes a symptom right there. Like that a Veterans Court is something that is established because of the amount of people that may make these offenses here back home due to the experiences and the ways that they were trained when they're overseas or when they're deployed. And it's like, okay, well, if that's a symptom, then, what are some other things we could do? Because if we have to create an entire court to be able to handle the influx of people who are having these experiences, but are like the commonality is they're veterans, then what are some other things that we can do? And that's why, I salute the work that you're doing, Kelly, and people who are stepping up, who have had that lived experience, but are creating environments for people to come and feel safe, heal, have access to resources in it. And even when you talk about the yellow ribbon, and you do watch the PowerPoint for 8 hours, and then you're given the pamphlets. Like, there are things that I've been exposed to where it's like, somebody who hasn't had this experience like created this thing. This wasn't created for us by us. This was created by somebody because they obviously don't know how anxious I am to just get home right now. And how not receptive I am to any of these pamphlets. So to have somebody who's had that experience, like, okay, what am I feeling at this point in time when I'm about to reintegrate back into society? Like, what am I feeling at this point in time? And how can we best create something that lends to that specific experience? And that can only come from somebody who's had it.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Kelly, go ahead. I'll let you.
Nope, that's all I was going to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I was just going to ask, I feel like we've talked a lot about some of these bigger, systemic things that even with shifts that are happening, obviously there's a lot of opportunity just to create a softer landing for folks who are coming home and maybe before they go. But for our listeners, we have, actually, I guess this is a 2-part question, because I definitely feel like you would probably have some words for folks who have had that, who are veterans, who or active duty, that are struggling and would benefit from your words. But also for folks who aren't, who don't have that lived experience, who don't necessarily know how it feels, who maybe feel kind of like, I have no idea how to support this person. Is there any, and if you don't, it's okay, but any words you might share with someone on how to create a place, a world that's a little safer for folks who are coming home? How can we support people we know? I don't know if there's an answer.
Yeah, man, I wish there was a magic answer. I think that we're definitely on our way, right, with education just of what PTSD is and how it shows up in our families and in our own selves, as far as, creating spaces for people to feel like they can. I think just normalizing it. And I think that's just is going to take time. And it's through stuff like the Phoenix, where I think that hopefully in the next couple of years, we'll see, veteran specific programs that are Phoenix events where we can bring other veterans together so that, like you said, like Bryce, lived experience. I can't be my mom saying you should go to this thing that's for veterans. But if I go and I say, hey, come with me, come with me to these things. So I think probably the big one is if you are a veteran or active duty that understands and sees kind of what's going on, normalizing it and bringing other veterans and other active duty service members along with you and not holding on to that information for yourself, I think would be beneficial. Like I told those guys this morning, like you being here, now it's your responsibility to go share it with the other men and let them know that it's okay to do things like this and that it actually does help is huge. I think, organizations like Veterans Yoga Project and, Warrior Path and serving, bringing yoga aspects and different awareness things is definitely a step. And it's just going to take time. I mean, look at the recovery world and how long it took us to get to even a chunk of reducing the stigma, this very surface level. I think it's the same for helping veterans. It takes time and it takes lived experience. But I think we're on our way.
Yeah.
Getting there.
Yeah. And we definitely appreciate you taking your time to come and talk to us today. I think this will be a valuable episode for anybody listening, but specifically within the community of veterans and veterans assistance and families of veterans. I think this is an important conversation that needs to be amplified and be had more within the community. Because when you talk about that connectivity, that human connection, if we don't understand each other, like it's hard for us to be there for each other. And so conversations like this, I feel like enlarge our ability to have an understanding for each other and to be able to show up for each other. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I think if there's any service member or veteran that is listening to this, just knowing that it's okay to be struggling and that it's okay to ask for help. And I think calling that Veterans Crisis Line, I've done that a couple of times, and it helps to have someone on the other side just listening to you. And so call the Veterans Crisis Line, like call your local mental health crisis line, call the VA. And I know there's such a stigma around like, oh, they're not going to be able to help me. Oh, the lines are going to be super long. But they have made, taken tremendous steps in being a little more proactive with helping veterans and being a little more responsive to helping veterans. And so, like, if you're listening to this and you're struggling, just know that there are people out there that really care about you. And I think that that's the biggest thing. Just having a phone number to text, having a phone number to call is huge. So if you're not that person for someone, find someone to be that person for, and know that there are people out there who want to see you tomorrow, I think is a huge the problem, the one thing that I want to get across in this podcast episode.
Yeah, no. And I think that's the perfect place to take us out. Once again, we appreciate you for coming on. We will have all the links and phone numbers and resources in the show notes of this podcast. You can go check those out if you need those. Always hop on the Phoenix app because we do have some veterans-specific programming here in Detroit, I know. And so the more that we're able to contribute to being a resource for that, I know we'll be digging deeper into that. And besides that, we salute you all for your service, those who went and served. Happy Veterans Day, whether it's coming up or it just passed. And we will catch you next time on the Rise, Recover, Live podcast.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.